Welcome back to Builders of the Broken Bazaar. I'm your host once again, Dr. Tabish Zaman. Now, I don't know if you can see or feel, but politics, especially British politics, is usually presented to us from controlled spaces. We're talking about parliamentary chambers, television studios, party conferences, rooms where everyone has been briefed, rehearsed, and prepared for the questions coming their way. But the real politics, I believe, of a country like United Kingdom happens somewhere else. It happens outside the supermarkets, at the bus stop, the town centers, and demonstrations, and in brief conversation between strangers who may never agree on anything again. And this is where I feel anger becomes visible, or at least where political slogans collide with ordinary lives, and where people sometimes reveal far more than they intended actually. The distance between citizens and formal politics has become very difficult to ignore. At the 2024 general election, turnout fell to 59.7%, down from around 67.3% in 2019, the lowest levels since 2001. In a research conducted after election, the Electoral Commission found that 54% of the people believed elected representatives did not care about people like them, while only 22% believe they did. And into that gap walks my guest today, usually wearing a suit, sometimes presenting himself as someone his interviewee assumes will agree with, and then asking more questions. One more question. Adam Brichto is a British filmmaker, a producer, director, presenter, whose recent work takes political inquiry out of the studio and onto the street. He has spoken with so many supporters of Nigel Farage and Reform UK, entered the right-wing political spaces, and has effectively used humor, performances, and simple questions to uncover the tension underneath the political certainty. But this conversation today, which you and me are going to have, is not simply about comic or comedy. It's about satire as a form of political engagement and democratic expression, about why humor can reveal political truths and realities that conventional commentary sometimes struggles to communicate. And again, about whether satire has become part of that informal infrastructure of democracy, a place where power can still be questioned when trust into politicians, journalism, and public institutions is declining, as we can see. And it is about what happens when tradition enters the age of algorithm, short-form content, platform censorship, and attention economy. So my question, can satire still challenge power? Can it change a simple political mind? Or have we become a country that is very good at laughing at its institution, but incapable of reforming them? Adam Brichto, welcome to Builders of the Broken Bazaar.
Thank you very much. That's the best intro that I've ever received. So, I'm already, we can finish now as far as I'm.
No, that is kudos to your work, Adam, because people now encounter you as this confident man walking into this highly politically charged spaces. And again, you're speaking with strangers, and somehow you're allowing that uncomfortable conversation to unfold. But again, this is something very new. I believe you've had a much sort of a less straightforward journey into filmmaking. You've worked across different jobs, environment before deciding what you wanted to tell as far as stories are concerned. So again, before we talk about politics, Adam, we want to know the person before that camera. What those experiences have shaped you and how they've shaped you about reading people.
Okay. That's a very difficult question. I don't know. Do I want to reveal the real me? And do I know the real me? So I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm that deep. I don't know if I 100% fully know myself yet, but I know that I like talking to people on the street. So that's taking it.
You've had so many hats on. You've always wore so many hats.
So yeah. So if you want to brief, where do we want to start? From childhood?
Take your pick.
I wasn't always confident. I was brought up in Pinner, Middlesex. So that's the hometown of Elton John. And Pinner is very famous for a fair.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also just a very unexciting suburb of London. My dad was quite interesting because he was a liberal rabbi and would be described as a Zionist. these days. So, but everything else about him was pretty liberal. And I was lucky enough to be one of the few people that I grew up with and went to school with, and my peers, that felt like I had left-wing values. But I don't know if I would be able to explain what they were. I just knew that I didn't feel that comfortable with some of the people that I went to private boys' school with. Our school motto, incidentally, was serve and obey. And that kind of summed up the kids I was growing up with, that all basically thought that Margaret Thatcher was the best thing ever because their parents thought that Margaret Thatcher was the best thing ever. But anyway, I wasn't a very confident kid, but I was quite eccentric, and I wanted to make friends and I wanted to be popular, but I kind of was a little bit awkward and uncomfortable about it. So, but in terms of my professional career, academically, I was very lazy. I was probably bright, but I was not in any way exceptional. And I just didn't really bother because I think I was a bit of a perfectionist. I didn't want to put pen to paper because I was nervous that it wasn't going to be good enough. So, and what I'd do is I'd eventually start writing my essays on the school bus on the way to school, and I'd finish them in the toilets during assembly. So it didn't really matter if I got a bad grade because I wasn't really trying. And so I was a bit of a disappointment in the school I went to because, in fact, the year that we got our A-levels, the year that we did our A-levels, we came third in the country for A-level results. So the average was probably, it was before A stars, but the average was probably 3 A's still. And I got 2 B's and an E. I went to a university that had previously been a polytechnic. So I could have been seen as a great disappointment. It was a really terrible course, literary studies at the University of the West of England. And I basically was exceptionally lazy there as well. So I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to just hang out. I smoked a bit of weed. I didn't read about, I think that because everything had been handed to me on a plate, I didn't really care too much about sort of like doing well, or I was just putting it off. I was kind of like, but I always thought, okay, I could do something decent, but I just didn't know what it was. And I was nervous about sort of like breaking through and sort of like really going for something. So that's probably far too much.
But I think that's a very interesting background. But when did politics enter your journey? I mean, were you always engaged, or is it more to do with fascination around people, behavior? Because I find politics weird in a lot of different ways, because it shows a lot of different sides to people, irrespective of which party you look at. But, and again, in India as well, when I was growing up, that has always caught my attention in terms of how do these political leaders behave, how do they talk, how do they, assure people. But so in your case, and again, this is not about me, this is about you. Have you always been? I
always knew that I hated Margaret Thatcher. I always knew that I wasn't a fan of John Major. I remember staying up late when Tony Blair got into power and being really excited. But I wouldn't necessarily know now, if I knew then, what the basis of my political beliefs were. I just knew that Labour supported more equality. And I think I felt very privileged and didn't deserve my privilege and didn't deserve my opportunities. And I just thought, you know what, we need to make it fairer. And I think it's partly because I grew up around a lot of spoilt kids who I just thought, you know what, you should care more about the rest of society. But I didn't really engage very much with the rest of society. I was just still in my own little bubble, hanging out with my sort of like well-to-do privileged friends, and probably quite enjoyed myself doing that. But I still, at the time, always felt very comfortable talking. I think I always felt comfortable talking to anyone. I think that I was just lucky in the fact that I would always be interested in having a conversation with the newsagent, the person stacking shelves in the shop. I always thought, you know what, there's so much more to people than the people that you just hang out with. But I didn't go out of my way to have those experiences. I just had them in everyday life.
And then the filmmaking entered as well. I mean, that's another aspect of your work. So
that happened a lot later. I was in a capitalist job. I was a travel agent. I earned quite a lot of money. I was earning £60,000 a year up when I was like 25, 26 years old, trying my best to rip off people, because that was if we could get, basically we made money on the profit that was made on the flights. So, and we could choose how much we sold the flights for. And I enjoyed that competitiveness. So I didn't see anything wrong with that, which is quite bonkers when I think about it now. But there was something fun about the game.
Yeah.
And then I had a bit of a midlife crisis, even though I was 27, so I'm 52 now. So I'm hoping I live an extra few years to go beyond that being a midlife crisis. And it was I actually had an existential crisis. Then I was like, I can't be a travel agent for the rest of my life. I didn't want to see a gravestone that said he was a great travel agent. So I became a teacher. And I became a teacher in a really interesting area, Dagenham, which is Essex / East London. And I was teaching kids that I couldn't really relate to because I hadn't had their life experience. They all generally lived in estates around the school. But I liked them. But the problem I had was, I did relate to them, but I didn't. My biggest issue was that I wanted to be friends with them. And also I was still lazy. And I wasn't natural at doing the work. I just found that tricky. So then I left that, became a salesperson, but this time basically running a business with my brother and a mate of ours. And we built a business basically selling corporate videos, selling to the NHS. And then a few years down the line, I realized I don't want to be selling videos. I want to be making videos. So I ended up doing corporate videos myself. I slowly put myself randomly making videos with talking to people on the street. Yeah. And that was through chance that I discovered actually I'm pretty good at this.
And it's working really well that way in terms of, so would we call this as political journalism? Obviously these things happen at a huge distance. We're talking about how politicians speak to the press team. Obviously us as citizens, we are talking more in terms of how we vote, and again, you hear all the mainstream media talking about public opinion more in terms of, okay, these are the percentage points. But your work, I feel, it really changes. And again, all the research which I've done around you, it changes, it completely reverses the process. You, through that street discussion, through that interaction which you're having, you are placing human being back in front of those percentage points or numbers. So the question here is, why did you choose the street? And you could have, again, given the background you've had, the privilege you've had, you could have sat in a studio and you're trying to, come up with new spin around British politics, new way to dissect British politics, but you're on the street.
I've been very lucky because I didn't choose any of this. So my brother, a few years later, after I left the company, got in touch with me and said, we've got a job for you. You're the only person that we know that can do this because you don't ever get embarrassed. Because the job was working for an organization called Electrical Safety First. And the brief was that we wanted to get the public to realize you should never feel too awkward to not be able to ask your electrician whether they are registered. Quite hard. Can you get your concept around that? So, and the creative concept is that I would ask loads of awkward questions to people on the street. And that was the first video I ever did. I just went up to people and asked them if I could touch their face, if I could take them out for dinner. I made people feel phenomenally awkward, and the client loved it. And then a few months later, I went viral for the first time. And it just happened to be, again, a bit of creative that someone else in the company had done, a guy called Matt, which was to tie in with anti-Brexit. So they were very worried about Brexit. They were very worried that the country might be stupid enough to vote for Brexit, and thought, okay, we'll do some of our own propaganda. And I just came in as someone that went up to people and said, can I have £1, please? Can I have £1, please? And in those days, people actually carried change. So 10 years ago, believe it or not. And people said, well, why do I need to give you £1? I said, well, you might get something back. Yeah. And they were like, okay, I'll give you £1. And then I took £1 and then I gave them a tenner. They were like, what? And then the simple concept was, for every £1 we put into the EU, you get £10 back. And that, I think, had about 5 or 6 million views on Facebook. And it was one of a lot of people said it was one of the best pieces of anti-Brexit propaganda that went out over that campaign. But at the same time, it didn't do any good, did it? So
we lost the narrative there. But again, having done this for so long, Adam, I mean, And again, we are living in a social media times where attention span is so short. And when you're trying to make something like that, what do you think a 2-minute conversation for someone like, again, come to Hull for that matter, Hull or Blackpool, even Gorton for that matter? What can it reveal, or what can it tell people who are watching it about the mood or the sentiment of the nation on a particular topic? I mean, look what Farage is doing at the moment, or what Reform is doing at the moment. Do you think 2 minutes is good enough, or it gives someone enough time, and someone like you, a creative, someone like you, to make your point?
Well, I operate in that medium because I know if you create something that's 3 minutes long or 4 minutes long, the algorithm won't look after it. So
Yeah.
it might look after it in a podcast, but I am not good at making long pieces of content. I make a lot of films a year, and I can be very focused on that being as good as it can be, and I can make hundreds of pieces. For me, I admire people that make documentaries, but I mean, imagine you spend, like, some people I've known have spent 10 years making a film, and at the end of it, the exhaustion and how many people get to see it. But you might get more minutes watched overall, and you might have an impact, but you never know if you're going to have an impact. If I have a failure, if I have a few hundred people watch a video, I can make another video the next day. So for me, it's the perfect medium. Do I worry about whether there is enough time to get a point across? Not really. I don't worry about it because I think basically the internet doesn't lie. If people are sharing it and it's getting lots of views and it's getting likes and it's getting comments and engagement, then it's obviously hitting a nerve. And I am very lucky to be in a position right now where I get quite a few messages a week that say, thank you. Thank you for doing what you're doing. And I don't feel like I deserve those thank yous because I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And also I feel like actually the stars of the show are the people I'm talking to because they are not in their comfort zone. I'm always in my comfort zone being on the street, talking to anyone, unless it gets violent, and that doesn't happen. I mean, it doesn't really happen. So generally, for me, it's like we should be celebrating the people that are actually having conversations with me.
Is that how you measure your impact as well?
What, with people saying nice things about me?
Yes. No, I mean, just in terms of, obviously, we are talking about the social media trends in terms of the likes, the comments, the shares, and again, people reaching out to you personally. So you must have something within you to ensure, okay, yes, you know what, this is working. This is really working.
I think the things that have happened this year, where I would say this is what I really enjoy. I really enjoy a conversation on the street where someone that said at the beginning of the conversation, I really like Nigel Farage, and a few minutes later saying, I didn't know about that. How come I don't know about that? Thank you for having this conversation with me. I'm going to look into it further. And some people go, wow, if everything you're saying is true, I hate Nigel Farage. I mean, that's amazing because I know that even if it's not having an impact on people that are watching the video, it's had an impact there and then. And then it's interesting. I don't know how many people will change their minds by watching the videos because I also don't know how strongly it gets out of the algorithm. But I met this brilliant person who put a message on one of my videos who said in the comments, these videos are cutting through. Reform are changing their minds. He said they're not changing their mind in time for the local elections that had just happened, where they voted Reform in his area. But I went up to see him and he told me, and we had a chat and we shared it, that we shared the video of the conversation, and it was a very popular video as well. He explained how he saved videos from people that made content. And I wasn't the only person's videos he saved. And when he was in the pub and having a conversation with people about how they like Nigel Farage or how they like Rupert Lowe, he got his phone out and said, watch this. And he said, people wanted to disprove me, but they actually found when they looked into it that everything I was saying was true. So they changed their mind. So changing minds has got to be
That's a great example. Yes.
Changing minds is the only point scoring in the game I'm in.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what it is. I mean, that's what politics is. I'm making propaganda, but it's good propaganda because it's honest, or it's as honest as it can be, as far as I'm aware. I mean, who knows the truth? I think I know the truth. So I'm sharing it because I'm quite passionate about it. And I think there's a lot of assholes that are running the media right now, and there's a lot of assholes that are conning people. I really like what James O'Brien has said before: compassion for the conned, contempt for the con men. And a lot of the people I'm meeting on the street are good people that have been conned, and it feels like it's important to try and have conversations with them. And I don't think enough people who are on the left are doing that.
Yes. And not doing that enough boldly or, strongly enough, passionately enough. But I want to dive into your creatives here, Adam, in terms of looking at your approach to this conversation which you're having with people on the street. I mean, I'll get to the man in the suit after this, but I've got a couple of questions before. In terms of, so when you are heading into this domain of yours, a theme of yours, what are you looking for? Are you looking for contradiction? Are you looking for comedy? Or are you looking for a common understanding with the person you're talking to?
I guess I start with a theme. So, I mean, the amazing thing about reform is that they give so many potential pieces for content. Obviously, comedy can help because if it be funny, then it can help get the message out there because people will share. But I realized, I mean, this is probably worth touching on. The first, can we talk about the suit now?
Yeah, go ahead. Yes, yeah.
So the first video I made wearing the suit was with an organization called 38 Degrees. They'd done some research that showed that many reform voters were actually completely unaligned with reform policies. So the examples that the research showed, for example, that they were not fans of 0-hour contracts or fire and rehire, or the fact that they wanted to get rid of the NHS, or that they wanted to cut spending on public infrastructure by £150 billion. So I was actually inspired by Zach Polanski, who I'd been going out doing some videos with previously. And his line was, everyone knows about the Green Party everyone thinks, when people hear about the Green Party, they think we're just about the environment, but there's so much more to us than that. And he then would start talking about social justice around how they want to create more housing, how they want to level up the inequality, tax the wealthy, etc., etc. And I thought this is a very good framework. Because when it comes to reform voters, everyone knows that, putting myself as a reform supporter, everyone knows that we hate immigrants, but do they know anything about our other policies? And I said to people, isn't it terrible that everyone just thinks we're all about hating immigrants, but they don't know anything about our other policies? And they'll be like, yeah, it's awful. And I said, well, can you think of any of our other policies? And they were like, no, they had no idea. And then I shared some of the policies with them, which were around the same things that we were talking about, around getting rid of the NHS and net zero, and not believing that man-made climate change doesn't exist, and cutting spending on infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. And they were like, they really didn't know. And they ended up looking like idiots. And I felt afterwards that, I'm very proud of this video because it's cut through and people find it hilarious. And it's a guy wearing a suit. And it's like, well, he's basically made reform voters look so stupid. And that's very exciting for people like us because we hate reform. So it was a good opportunity to go, look at you stupid reform voters. But I was thinking more and more and more, the longer that time went on, is that I hadn't been very fair to these people because they were not the enemy.
Yeah.
And maybe it did get the point across a little bit, but some people would say, you were a bit cruel to those people. And I thought, yeah, I was. So why don't I go back to the same place that I filmed in, which was Blackpool, and try and have some proper conversations, but wear the suit. And I thought,
sorry, go ahead.
And I thought that people would recognize me because the video had done really well. Interestingly enough, I hadn't really broken through the algorithm there because no one recognized me. So it's interesting. It was like, okay, well, who's actually watching this video? Yeah. So that can be frustrating. It's like, I think you have to be constantly making content to cut through and to get out of that algorithm and I know I'm out of it now because Restore are commenting on my posts. They're really angry. If you know that you're getting people that are pissed off with you, then you're doing all right because you've actually made it out of your own bubble. And now having really good conversations with people and changing people's minds, not all the time. It's a bit of a euphoric feeling, actually. I do get a buzz out of it.
Which is great. I mean, I feel your suit is actually part of the whole storytelling. Again, was there a thought behind it in terms of course, having that kind of suit and that suggests a lot of authority and respectability, at least, you present through the political alignment. And again, when they see you on the street in that suit, you would assume at least people would make that immediate judgment about who you are and what you believe in. So do you think that makes your conversation a lot more easier? And I'm not talking about going for the second time. Let's say if you come to Hull, wearing that suit and talking to people on the street. Do you think that give you somewhere to go with the conversation? They sit down with you and they talk to you and they really, who's this man in the suit? Is he a character, one amongst us?
Yeah, it makes it easier to talk to reform voters, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Because reform voters are probably a bit nervous because I think to an extent, the far right still in this country, they're more emboldened than they were ever before. But it's interesting, isn't it, that but with the polling leading up to Brexit, all the polls suggested that would stay in Europe. But it implied that people weren't comfortable about saying that they would vote for Brexit because they didn't want to be judged.
Yeah.
And now I think there is still that nervousness when you see people, when you're on the street, that people don't want to be judged for hating immigrants. But you know what? It's changed a lot. And actually people are much more emboldened now with the rise of the far right to say some pretty awful things on the street.
It's become mainstream.
I've got actually the trousers are here. This does give people a license to say anything they want because they think I'll be on their side. Very nice pair of trousers. £28 that cost me. Best £28 I've ever spent in my life.
Do you reckon this is one of the best social experiments one has ever done on the street? Because it works brilliantly. And I also want to look up for a man behind it, because some of these things we might be talking about in a closed room, but here you are on the street, not pretending, you are talking facts and you're having that discussion, and which allows people to come on your side as well, isn't it? Because you make them agree to what you have to say. And, on a very serious note, Adam, this question, you initially mentioned about, how you've been unfair, or how sometimes the commentators are unfair to some of these Indians because it's not their fault. So my question here is do you think overall, and again, up and down the country, citizens and people here in Britain, they're suffering from a crisis where they are not being heard, or they're not being listened to and again, this might be a very simple question given how deep your work has gone, but is it a case? Is it a case where genuinely they're not being listened to for whatever their issue may be?
They feel, this is the narrative. They're presented a narrative. And I think that people genuinely think it. It's like we have been left behind. I think there is a lot of truth in that for some of these towns, these industrial towns, these mining towns that always used to vote Labour. And it's like, well, the way I see it, and it's quite simplistic, is that Tony Blair said, you know what, we've got the North, we've got these areas, these rural industrial areas. They're always going to vote Labour. We need to focus on London. So all of a sudden, London is like a Labour haven, or it was up to a couple of months ago. But those towns feel like they've been left behind. And I'm not so sure that Tony Blair's policies were that bad for the North. But there was a. I do think that they never replaced the industry, and privatization, I think, has really fucked up this country big and proper. I now have a narrative with people on the street, which is that we do have a problem with foreigners. The problem with foreigners is foreign billionaires. Yes. Can you think of any examples of companies that were British that are still British? And there's a few, but they are few and far between. It's like, our water companies, the same ones where they're dumping shit into our rivers and seas, most of them aren't British. Yes. They're German, they're Chinese. They're from every country in the world that isn't Britain. It's insane. And I think there is an element that you can tell people that we want our country back, but we want it to take it back from the people that have been screwing us over for years, who are the people that haven't given a shit about the little man, the people that are So I do think that is something that people do feel. And I think if we can tap into that anger, but just say, you know what, your anger is wrong to be directed at someone that's coming off a boat that's fleeing, more than likely, a war-torn country, that just wants a better life and that just wants to do a decent job. And that's pretty similar to your values, no?
Yeah.
That your values aren't basically coming into a place and completely exploiting every person in a town and paying them as little as you possibly can while you're raking it in, and you've got no affiliation with that country, with this place whatsoever. So I think that's where we need to go with the narrative.
A narrative in a way which works, where this is where, and as an expert, you could tell me, because satire gives you that permission to enter that space and ask questions, which again, a conventional journalism or conventional reporter, they approach it too politically correct. So you're able to cut through that.
Can I ask you a question? Do you mind if I
Yeah.
ask you a question? What makes you think I am? I mean, people say it that
Mhm.
I am satirical, but I question it because I think the conversations I'm having on the street are just standard conversations. They're just but I'm interested. What makes you think it's satire?
What I feel is like we've had as you know, looking at what goes on a screen, what you do, you know, there's a hint of duality around it. In a sense, you're talking something very important, which touches most of our lives, you know, as citizens of the country. At the same time, the way you do it, and again, look at the bin face, for example, you know, what's happening in Clacton at the moment. But there is this element of entertainment as well, you know, in terms of how you keep them hooked, how you keep them. I saw one of your clip, you know, the other day where, you know, you literally took that money out of the hat, you know, for Singham. That was a brilliant piece, by the way. And then, you know, your body language, your, you know, the way you presented it, it looked very natural. It looked very, you know, it didn't look rehearsed. It didn't look. So what I'm trying to tell you here is that there is this duality around what you do. It cuts through the core message of what you're trying to. At the same time, there's a hint of performance in it as well, if that makes sense.
It does. It's weird though, because I think then naturally that's just what I am. So I think maybe always performing, but it's actually a genuine conversation. I have been told that I am one of these people that is able to have an instant rapport with people. I think I would see it more as that ability rather than something which relates to being satirical. It's just about finding a way to have a connection and to feel like a lot of the people that you speak to, they're having pretty crap days. You know, it might be having not the best day, and actually you have a conversation and you realize you've got a lot of power being able to touch people in a certain way. I spoke to someone yesterday, and we ended up having a conversation about their story, and they were telling me that they lived in a hostel and they'd fallen on hard times. And we actually had a very touching conversation after the camera was turned off that was like, well, which was just like where Dennis, who holds the camera with me, and I were just having genuine empathy for him, because we said, you're so eloquent on camera, and actually we just wish you the best, and we're really sorry about how things have worked out. And in the process, we were learning as well something really messy about something political, that you can live in a hostel and you can want to get a job, but if you get a full-time job, they'll throw you out the hostel. So where's the incentive for people like that to actually go and make the plunge? So there's things that we're learning in the process, but I have forgotten the question. The question was something around...
Yeah, you asked me a question in terms of how you think my work is satirical. But
I think
back to,
the key thing is, I mean, in a nutshell, I think the key thing is connection. It's about finding, and I think that's what people are enjoying more that are watching the videos. Rather than anything satirical and performative, I think that they're finding some hope that there's some social media that is out there that isn't presenting noise and these people are wankers and these people are wankers and we've got to be angry and it's actually, there's a bit of there's a bit of humanity going on where people are connecting, and they might be connecting even if they have completely different views. So that for me is the strongest thing.
I agree with that, Adam. But you would also agree with me where the moment politics enter an argument, a serious political argument, especially when you're talking about migration, you're talking about, you know, fiscal responsibilities, we're talking about our borders, there's so many things. It often causes people to become defensive, irrespective of which side they're on. And, they recognize the position, they identify who's with them and who's against them. And again, you have a camera in hand, you have a microphone in hand. Don't you feel that people are already preparing the response based on how they see you? And that is where I feel that is one of your speciality, where humor enters as well in that conversation.
Okay, so that's why I think the suit helps, because people are confused. They don't know whose side is he on.
Yeah.
What is he? It's like, there's something really tricky.
Yeah.
I think it really depends on the person. So the person that you're referring to that I met the other day is someone in Clacton who was just the most amazing, beautiful woman, really, that saw me finishing an interview with someone else and shouted out, "What's occurring?" And I said, "We're talking about Nigel Farage." She was like, "Are you up for having a chat?" "Yeah, I'll have a chat." Blah, blah, blah. Sat down, conversation. "What do you think of Nigel Farage?" "Nigel Farage is great. I think he's going to sort out this country." Pop out the fiver. "Why are you giving me a fiver?" "Well, what do you mean?" "Well, I don't like it." "Why? I mean, you want something for it? I mean, what? You trying to buy me with the fiver?" "That's interesting. Nigel Farage just received 1 million £5 notes. So what do you think he wanted back? Well, what do you think the person that gave him the money wanted back for it?" And she was open to the conversation. And I think maybe sometimes there you've got to be, it helps if you can be a little bit clever.
Yeah.
It helps also if you don't necessarily reveal everything beforehand. Do you like 0-hour contracts? No, of course I don't like 0-hour contracts. I've been on them before and they've screwed me over. Do you think that a company can fire you and rehire? Do you think a company should be allowed to fire you and rehire you on a lower salary? No, that's awful. I know that people that's happened to it. It happened to me. Companies are taking the piss. Of course that shouldn't be allowed to happen. Nigel Farage voted to keep those policies in place. What? Nigel? I mean, you've got to be a bit clever. It's like, okay, get them to open up before you tell them what you're trying to achieve. And some people will be defensive. But if you've got, generally also the people that you talk to on the street, the people that are going to have the conversation with you are people that are already a bit more open than most people anyway.
Yeah.
Some people are really fixed. I want to get this word. They're the completely opposite. You might have the extremes. People that are really open because, oh, you know what, I'll give this a whirl. And they're not so worried about how their image is going to be portrayed. And some people are like, yeah, no, I want to talk because I know my feelings and I know exactly my opinions and I want to share them. And then those people, you're unlikely to change their view, but you might do. Sometimes you have to be a bit prickly with them because I know that I've changed my mind on things through all types of conversation. I know that I've been embarrassed in a conversation and actually afterwards I've been honest with myself and thought, I don't want to be embarrassed like that again. Maybe I should do some real research into this. So all of it can be helpful, even if you don't think it's helpful at the time.
Yeah. No, so you've had people who laugh at their own answer and recognize at least the weakness in what they have said. I saw another of your video where you carry in a box, and within that box you had a train driver, TFL, and again they're talking about 12-hour shift, and that was very clever. I felt that was extremely clever in terms of how you made people talk to you open. I mean, you had those black-eyed,
I can't take any credit for that. That's our friend Jeremy Clancy.
Oh, well,
That was his gig. So he.
If I'd known this earlier, I'd have spoken to him about this.
Oh wow! So he's a man of many talents. So that one was his.
Yeah, okay. That was a wonderful storytelling. But then you've also entered rallies, which is a public space, as we know, is emotionally charged. It's a lot different to the street, I believe. People already arrive there with some kind of identity, loyalty to whoever is talking or whoever is on the stage, and a sense of belongings. I want to know from you what changes when you cross that boundary into that political rally rather than speaking to someone ordinarily on a high street. Is it different? Do people become different inside a crowd because they've got the whole legion of people behind them and, there's a big momentum around it? Whatever they're talking about.
When I went to Croydon to film at the rally there, I think it changes for me depending on how nervous I am. So obviously there's an element of me, presenting myself as a reform supporter and then telling them stuff which is completely the antithesis of what they think feels a bit scary. But then you just get one or two out of the way and you go, okay, actually, I can handle this. So that's a difference. I think that the reality is, and this is going to sound harsh, but the people that go to reform rallies are a completely different kettle of fish generally to the people that are voting for reform in the street. Because these people are quite passionate and therefore they are trying to educate themselves and feel like they should know everything, and yet they're still voting for reform. So I would say that for a lot of them, their level of intelligence is lower. And that might be a bit harsh. It sounds harsh, but I think also it might not be that their level, it also might be that they are choosing to, in some ways, subconsciously just lose their intelligence.
Yeah.
And I think that explains why so many of the councillors that reform have recently managed to get into power are actually ridiculously awful. So they are, I mean, and I feel less bad about taking the piss out of them because they are actually, they're in those positions of power.
Yeah.
So, but also some of them are just like, I mean, I feel sorry for some of them. Some of them are holding on to this idea of reform. Like some people hold on to religion like a crutch.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, this is everything about me. This is my identity. So when I tell people, you know what, the amount of money that the government spends on asylum for people coming across the channel on boats is 25 pence in every £100. For a lot of people, they don't understand the maths. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. But they were like, what? I mean, because they're already initially telling me that they think it's like £75 or 75% of everything that's spent is spent on people coming over on boats. I mean, there's not, sadly, those people you're not going to win over, but that's content for a video. It's like, you know what, you're sharing with people this, you're trying to get them to question their beliefs, but you kind of know they're not going to be able to handle the truth. But actually placing those facts and myth busting can be really important. Yeah. So it's going back a little bit on taking the piss, but I feel more comfortable taking the piss out of people.
I mean, you're very good at shining light on people you speak to, of course, you know. But like I said, this is also about knowing a bit about Adam, because it takes a lot in terms of how you encounter the language, the rhetoric, the discussion, the words. So when you enter these conversations, have you felt frightened? Do you feel it can turn, and it can turn in a nasty way? And also the question is, how do you remain calm? How do you handle it? Is it a case where you know your fact sheet?
I mean, I feel nervous before a conversation where people, I think, oh, they're going to know. They're going to know I'm not reformed. So the first time I wore the suit and went to Blackpool, it was like, I sound like a posh guy from London. What am I doing in Blackpool? I'm obviously a woolly lefty liberal. The first time I did it, I shaved off my beard because I thought, it's obvious. Anyone with a beard looks too left wing. And I realized afterwards, you don't need to do it. The suit's enough. And people are prepared to suspend reality because they just assume that people are going to be on their side that wear a suit. The occasions I've been nervous are when I wanted to get arrested for supporting a genocide. That was interesting. And I thought, okay, the police, I mean, if I go up to the police and tell them I support a genocide, they're going to arrest me.
I love that video, actually. I think it reminded me of something.
Yeah, it's my favorite. But you do it once and you realize, oh, they're not going to arrest me. And then you realize I can just do it more and more. I just keep going up to them and I'll keep getting content from these police that those poor guys, they can't help it. They have to be filmed and they can't stop it. So I'll just get more and more content. A lot of them, are just like, why do I have to be presenting such an awful opinion? Whereas some of them are like angry and they were like, okay, they probably genuinely believe that I'm the criminal. It's funny old business.
But you have touched a lot of subjects here. Let's give a bit of credibility, I'll be honest with you, in terms of the audience you're talking to. And again, we're talking about the right-wing supporters of Nigel Farage Reform UK. Let's come to a point where, based on your understanding and all the work you have done, what do you think they're actually asking for? And again, what do you hear? Is it ideological, or is it a case where they just want, or there's a demand in them to be noticed? Where do you stand on it?
they want to be listened to, and they think that Nigel Farage is their guy. In the same way that Donald Trump said, what did he say? I love you. I mean, it was kind of what was it exactly? Donald Trump. What was the actual wording? It was like something like they said they were idiots. I should Google this. Do you know? What did it? It was like
it doesn't ring my bell as well.
It was something along the lines of Donald Trump's supporters said something along the lines of "We are ignorant," and Donald Trump said, "I love you, ignorant people." And it was like, okay, this is great. It's like there's an element where there was an awareness that he was their guy. I should look that up because it's better than that, and we're doing it a disservice.
Okay,
but I think with the people that are voting for reform, some of them are just fed up. They feel like they have been left behind. But I think more people are just being fed a rhetoric that is, I mean, it goes hand in hand, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So cost of living has gone up. Wages in real terms have gone down. People are struggling to go on holiday, to save up any money month to month. The media is spreading information, and it's via all forms of media that people that are coming over not from this country are being put up in hotels. They're getting hundreds of pounds given to them, and they're first in the list for housing. And it's not true. But the narrative, that counter narrative, is not being publicly shared. And then a lot of people will tell me, I mean, they're all coming over on boats, and they're all rapists, they're criminals. Yeah. And it's like, dear, oh dear. So I think that it's important to go out on the street and have the conversations with people that say, this isn't true. Where are you getting this information? And it's harder to do, but it's actually worth it. So I haven't put any of these videos out yet, but I went out last week to the north of England and started talking to people about grooming gangs.
Yeah.
And the conversation was, what do you think of grooming gangs? Grooming gangs are awful. Well, I agree. Grooming gangs are awful. Who do you think the most people committing the crimes are? Well, I think they're Muslim. Okay, well, that's interesting. Well, let me tell you, they're not. And then you give them the stats. And that's because people don't talk about what happens. People don't talk about the online grooming gangs. And they're all white because that information is not being shared with you. And actually, there are more. I mean, there's like 89% of sex offenders in jail are white. And actually, you see people's brains going, oh, okay, I wasn't aware of that. And it's like, well, and some people are like, well, why are we being told this then? And they're angry. And I say, well, it's because the media is owned by people that don't want you to know the truth because they want to get away scot-free. Because right now, there are 50 families in the UK that have the same wealth as half of the British population. And they're making more and more money. And they make more money in times of crisis than they've ever made before. So, of course, they want you to blame the little guy that's coming over on a boat because it's in their interest for you to be angry with someone that isn't them.
Yeah. Especially when, I mean, you touched the note that in terms of how housing, NHS, wages, how the communities here in Hull itself, I mean, I've been working for the past 2-3 years, looking at the neglect in terms of the funding which is available. People are looking for explanation, but the political story which is actually being told to them, it's completely different. Again, there is no two-way about it.
Yeah.
But in your conversation, how often do you feel people connect their difficulties to immigration? Even the problem they describe has very direct little relationship to migrants. I mean, is it the first thing?
Yeah, the first thing. It's generally the first thing.
Yeah.
For Nigel Farage, it's like, well, we've got a massive problem with immigration, and that's the reason why I'm struggling. And actually, Nigel Farage, he cares about us. He cares about British people. And then there are some people that say, and it's really complicated, but I think have been, I believe this idea that Muslims are going to take over the UK.
Oh yeah, this is a big one. Yes.
And I don't, and they'll say, we're not racist. I'm not racist. In fact, people around here aren't racist, but this is a real fear that we have.
Yeah.
And I think that, there's a bit of me that thinks they're not racist. I think they are being fed these stories, and I get very frustrated with the intellectual left that should be more clever than just telling you, certainly should be more empathetic. Say, well, you should do your own research and you're stupid because you haven't looked at it. actually, the intelligent thing is to do stuff like I'm doing and go out and have chats with these people.
I agree.
Because actually, these guys, they haven't been privileged enough to have an education to work out how to disseminate the news. You actually know how to disseminate the news because you probably went to a university. You were taught how to do this stuff. Most people didn't get the best education because the school system hasn't been as good as it has been over the years. I don't know, when I was teaching in Dagenham, that for that I don't want to do this a disservice to the head of English. So let's array this, but I so I won't say his name. But I know that a lot of the time, what a teacher said to me, you know what? We just want them to get good grades. So we'll help them get good grades. We'll help them with the coursework because otherwise they won't they won't get good grades. So we just need to give them some confidence to go away with something. But these guys weren't learning.
Yeah.
They only cared in this school, as far as I remember, about the very top set, the top 2 sets. There were like 10 classes in a year. So most of those kids were just like, we just go to school and so that we can go out of school and then we'll do it. We'll do it. I mean, and some of them, who knows, they'll go into their family business. They'll do some manual trade.
Yeah. I mean, apprenticeship is very popular these days, but now they're coming after university as well for the right reason. Sometimes I believe because universities have also been doing a lot of disservice in the way they are operating. But again, this is something me and Jeremy discussed off camera as well in terms of, you spoke about the left wing, actual left wing, not doing enough in terms of what the kind of work you're doing. Is it also a case where they don't have the tools to talk of? So if we talk about things like if Zach is talking about let's tax the billionaires, and again we keep going on and on about it. I mean, you had Gary coming on, he's one of the recent documentary got a lot of, it's gone all over. There's a lot of back and forth on it. But is it a case where on issues like migration, economics, for the left wing to make those arguments, we don't have enough clever ideas, the right ideas? And I say sometimes, yes, we write papers, we talk about it in our research articles, but the language, the framing is just not right for people to understand, which is what you're doing very effectively.
I think you're not going to know how to have these conversations unless you go and have conversations with people. So the problem with the bigger problem with the intellectual left, which is mostly based in cities like London and Manchester, is that they don't want to go to the places that are undesirable, where people are voting reform. People only ever go to Clacton when there's a by-election. And Clacton's a lucky one because it's like getting all the headlines because it's got bloody Farage there. So they're actually more recognised than anywhere else. They're not going to Blackpool. They're not going to some of the old mining towns. I mean, no one ever goes there because they're not nice places to go. So no wonder that people don't know how to have conversations and with people like that because they're just...
I can understand that it's completely far apart in terms, but coming close to some of the issues like the migration especially. And again, I want to learn here. I want to learn from something which you do because these are valuable things in terms of cutting through those rhetoric. So when someone says migrants are receiving those preferential treatment, I know how to write it. I know how to, frame it as far as research questions are concerned. But how do you challenge that claim without immediately curtailing the conversation and saying...
I've been actually having conversations with the Refugee Council, and I think we're going to continue having a conversation about it. But I came up with an idea that says, why don't we take a refugee, and take them out on the street with us, have a conversation. The same way
make them human, yes.
In the same way that I did something with Patriotic Millionaires recently, and we went out with a millionaire and we had a conversation with people on the street about how she wanted to be taxed more.
Yeah.
So it's like people think that a lot of these immigrants are getting preferential treatment because they don't know any people in that situation. So it's quite easy to believe it. So the easiest way is probably to have someone that's actually can tell them, well, this happened to me and I was treated like shit. And actually I feel for you because actually we're both in a shit situation. But tell them the story. I left because of the war. I left because of, and I almost died coming over on the boat. And actually now I wonder whether I actually really wish I came because I feel like I'm being treated like shit here as well. I mean, who knows? I don't know what the conversations are. I haven't met those guys, but I want to have a conversation. And I mean, for me, I'm curious because, to be honest, I don't 100% know the truth because I haven't met me. So I want to get the information as well from the experts. So if you're an expert, I'd like to get that information from you. And I think it's one of the hardest things to do because it's like, okay, well, how do you, when someone says, well, that's not what I've heard, and I'm getting, so it's your news versus my news. Well, one of the deputy leaders of the Green Party said something really good on a news program recently, where I think she was talking to a caller that was having a massive go at immigrants, and she had the lived experience because she'd gone to Calais, and she said that she'd met the people that this person was really angry about taking all of her. Well, this random caller thought that this illegal immigrant was responsible for all the problems in her life. And it was like, well, actually, no, it's not the case. Rachel said, I've been to Calais and I can tell you these people have massively struggled and they're not having it easy. And when they come over here, it's not easy either.
Yeah.
So if you have been there and you'd seen what I'd seen, you might have a different feeling about it. Because people are overall, they're generally good. Most people are decent people. They just need to have their eyes open.
Yeah. But then someone in the spotlight, someone in the public eye, I'm pretty sure you have this at the back of your mind all the time where you're exposing an argument. At the same time, that humiliation, I know you mentioned about James O'Brien's quote there, but is there a difference in how you expose that argument and how sometimes it borders humiliation for the person who's making that argument? And you see that on LBC all the time, in terms of how some of them, they call and they talk about issues. They have no idea what they're talking about. And then the presenter or whoever is talking to them comes up with facts like what you do on the street.
It's just radio, isn't it? So it's so, I mean, I think James O'Brien is very sharp. I don't listen to him very much, but I know that it's a skill that I wouldn't be able to have because he's just clearly got a brain that is able to keep all that knowledge in and is very sharp when dealing with silly arguments. But I'm guessing that just by the nature of some of the social media that I have seen is that they want the most extreme conversations. They want people calling in that are that are really angry, that are unlikely to change their mind. So I think maybe there's a trick that's being missed there. But then I don't know. Maybe it's just also people that call into a radio show are naturally angry and don't want to change their mind. I don't know. It's a different demographic to me going out there and trying to persuade people to have a conversation with me. They haven't chosen to call me up and say, "Oh, I want to talk to the guy with the suit." And it does happen sometimes. And actually, the people that want to speak to me actually are often the best people because they're like, "What's going on here?" And they're open and they're excited to have the conversation. But I think as well that because it's live, there is an element of people just, I mean, I don't know. It's a good question. Maybe I'll listen to James O'Brien again and think about, okay, could he do it in a way that's a bit more gentle, a bit more empathetic?
But I like the way you differentiate yourself that way. But do you call yourself a filmmaker? Because again, I'm doing the podcast here, right? I ask a lot of questions, you know, but again, as a filmmaker, you control the framing, obviously the sequence in terms of what goes out.
Yeah.
So in a way, and again, you're doing this all live. You're doing all this live. So that gives you a lot of power. And I say power in a very neutral way. Yeah.
I agree with you.
So
I've got all the power.
So how do you decide? How do you decide what is fair to include and what would you remove something which is, and again, this is for me, Adam, something for which you feel is very entertaining, but it misrepresents, and we call that within our research paradigm, the ethics and all of that.
I'll be honest, I've had some very uneducated, low IQ people be exceptionally racist. And I thought, no, I can't put that out. It's just not it's just, I wondered whether, I don't think they had any understanding of where they were getting their information from. And I don't think they were bad people. I just think they had been completely manipulated and had been fed racism all their lives. So, and were never in a position to be able to see something differently. So, and maybe they could have done, but you'd have had to have spent hours with them. And it was, so no, I won't touch that. I'm Jewish. Someone was an 18-year-old kid recently I had a chat with told me that he thought that Jews ran the world. So I blurred the whole conversation, but I thought the conversation was important to have. So in terms of the edits, I edit just to make them sharper and more engaging. And I think I'm as honest as I possibly can be within the scope of making it engaging. It's interesting. I often think that maybe sometimes I feel a bit uncomfortable about putting something out, and I'm like, I wonder what that person's going to think if they see it. And then I'm sometimes really pleasantly surprised because they contact me and they say, "Hi, I'm the guy that you had that chat with." I had a kid again who was telling me about how he wanted Britain to be more British. And we had a decent, healthy conversation about it, and I pushed it to a conversation about billionaires, and maybe that was the bigger problem. And the conversation was a decent conversation. It was respectful, and he took stuff in. He was like, okay, and he wasn't like didn't change his mind, but you could tell that he had taken stuff in. And I felt bad because the comments were all having a massive go at him, and they were not just having a go at him for what he was saying, they were also having a go at him for how he looked. And it was unfair. And who knows, maybe some of these people were bots from Russia.
You do get quite a lot. You do get quite a lot on the comment section.
Yeah. So, and he messaged me and goes, "Why are people on the online so angry? Why?" And I said, "You know what? I don't know." I said, "All I can say is I've got massive respect for you for having the chat with me." And he actually posted the comments and he said, "You know what? This wasn't the whole conversation that I had." And he was right. I could have posted more of the conversation and maybe it would have painted him in a slightly better light. But I think there was an acceptance that, yeah, I'm the filmmaker. I've got the control. And I did do him a massive disservice by what I posted on the video. But yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to own the narrative, then you have to be the person with the camera. Or I could do stuff which is purely live, but I think, I mean, that might be a more honest way of doing it, but I'm nervous because I'm an R quite a lot, and sometimes I'm a decent editor, and the content's more interesting if you pick out the highlight.
I can assure you of that, and you're doing a fabulous job there. Now, let me ask you a few questions around censorship as well, because this is so important because we're dealing with that. And what worries you today in terms of the government? Of course, we've got a huge chunk there in terms of the platform moderation, what goes on. And I don't know if professional consequences in terms of the pressure to tell yourself, I'm not touching this or I'm not touching that. So what worries you? How do you deal with that conundrum?
So if we're just talking about, okay, what might get me cancelled, I think I'm more likely to be cancelled by the left than by the right. So, because the left is really tricky. So
why do you say that? Adam?
Because I've got more empathy than most people. I say that not as a compliment to myself. No, that's really unfair.
That's the most interesting man I've heard.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example. I filmed this guy that had been in the IDF, and he'd set up an organization called Breaking the Silence, which is an amazing organization which is there to get testimonials from Israeli soldiers to explain this is what's really going on. And he's brave because in Israel, God knows the threats he's going to get. And we did a 90-second piece where he talks about how the stuff that he had to do in the IDF, and it was awful stuff, but he was a 17, 18-year-old kid. And he explained it was all about control. It wasn't about providing safety to Israelis. It was about providing control for the Israeli government. And he's exposing the Israeli government. So many of the comments were, this guy should be tried in The Hague. This guy is a war criminal. And you're like, wow. And that's the problem I have with the left. I think that there are really difficult conversations.
Moving away from these political leaders, whoever they may be, whichever side they may be, because I feel it mirrors what we are talking about in America, here in UK as well. Is there anything which gives you hope about the British public and things which can turn around?
Yeah, I think they're learning that Nigel Farage is a twat. So I do swear a lot. My mum, she says I don't come across well when I swear. But no, it's just like, I mean, more and more evidence is showing that Nigel Farage has only got his own interests at heart. So, of course, now the Green Party give me hope. And I think Andy Burnham winning in Manchester gives me hope. So I hope that there can be some form of coalition where they, in some ways, make each other stronger.
Yeah.
I feel like the Green Party can be a phenomenal pressure group to say you can't get away with this shit anymore. Because and I think that in some respects that there I don't know, that just as the biggest political, I mean, just as the biggest political left wing party, that there is probably a few things that the Green Party can learn from Labour, which is just in terms of the structure of how to do things in a way that isn't overly idealistic. I don't know. I find it, I mean, this stuff is above my pay grade. I've never been inside Parliament, but it's an instinct and a sense that I have that there are the Green Party is the way it's set up means that that there might be some tricky elements within it, which relate to. I've got an Iranian friend that talks about how she goes to a Palestine protest and there are pictures of Khomeini and sort of like, and it's like, and the Green, and for people on the left, sometimes they don't want to know that. They don't want to know the problematic things that are going on because, and suddenly Iran is like, we're all celebrating Iran, but Iran has basically been persecuting her family for years and years. These are complicated things. And so I think that no one's perfect, but I do have hope that reform are by far the worst. I don't have to get, I mean, I like to keep it simple. I like to focus on reform being the enemy, the far right being the enemy. And I think that after that, hopefully we can clean up politics more and more. I'm like, Labour under Starmer, they did some really bloody awful stuff. I mean, some of the stuff around the right to protest and jailing grannies is insane as well.
And you must have seen the new policy which has come out, which was debated this week in terms of the asylum and migrant policy, the new one, which again is absolutely horrific.
Yeah.
But again, how do we go around the sort of discussion we have? Because the discussion is skewed so far that it'll take a while to even bring it to the central part of the discussion. It is so far right. But yeah, you're talking about hope. I've got a few one word or a quick question here. Okay. Tell me this. Any encounter which has genuinely frightened you?
No, there's been some little bits of violence, but many bits of violence. But no, I haven't ever been particularly scared. Apart from, I mean, I guess unless you talk about being frightened, actually seeing whether I was going to get arrested or not for supporting a genocide.
Yeah.
That was a little bit frightening because I didn't want to end up in jail because I had to do the edit that night.
Okay, now tell me this, Adam. One thing that the political left misunderstands about reform voters.
Well, that they aren't all stupid. And that they actually are open to changing their mind and they're not all racist.
Now, let me finish this sentence with you. What do you think British public is angriest about right now?
Well, the British public is very big. So that's a really difficult question. So what is most of the British public, well, not most of the, but most of the British public thinks that immigration is the biggest issue we have right now. They're probably angry about it as well. Most, maybe not most. So, but certainly it's a high proportion of them.
Yeah, okay.
But I mean, on a deeper note, I think most of the British public are just really angry with politicians in general. They just hate them all. They think they've all promised something and none of them have delivered. So that's why Nigel Farage is occupying this space, because he pretends to be one of them. He's not really a politician. He's not a politician. He's a businessman. So maybe they feel like, and they like the way that he holds a pint. So they're like, okay, actually he's okay. But actually, all the other politicians, they're really awful. So let me finish with this. My last and final question. One question every politician should be forced to answer in a town centre where you stand. Every politician should be forced to answer this question. I mean, that's not an easy question to come up with. Give me a moment. How many jobs do you have? Interesting. Very interesting. How many people pay your wages? You should only have one job if you're a politician. Yeah. There's something Zach suggested in one of the episodes, one of the discussion he had with someone on Tube, where politicians should be asked to wear a jacket with all the names, like, how you got in Formula One, you have all the sponsors. So politicians should be able to put that across. On Subway Takes, it was great. Yeah, it was great. Yeah. On that note, Adam, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. It was fabulous. I hope so. Did you get more than you bargained? I'm sorry, I got a bit. Yeah, it's a hard conversation. I struggle with it.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, if I was a bit edgy, it's because I'm confused by it as well.
No, I think overall, I think I loved it. Let me just finish it off. So, just to the audience listening, please keep questioning and keep building in the Broken Bazaar, and I will see you in the next episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much to you, Dr. Tabish Zaman. You were a fine interviewer, and I enjoyed the whole experience. So it was great.